All right, so far we have covered the main functions you will commonly be using when dealing with arrays. But there are a bunch of other features here that I'm not going to cover specifically. If we get to them in future lessons, we'll cover them. But for now, I don't think it's necessary. But let's go over a few of them just to make you aware of them. So let me scroll up to the top here and make sure I haven't missed anything. So we've covered declaring arrays. We've covered using the VAR keyword. We've covered reading and writing. We've covered looping through arrays and scope. I didn't cover history referencing in detail, but you can come to the documentation if you want to know more about that. It's quite simple to understand. Then we have inserting and removing. We have covered inserting, removing. We've covered concatenation. We've covered sorting and reversing. But that's it. We haven't covered copying. We haven't covered joining. We haven't covered slicing. We haven't covered searching arrays. And we haven't covered these two, using an array as a stack and as a queue. So let's start with using an array as a stack. So stacks are LIFO, last in, first out constructions. They behave somewhat like a vertical pile of books to which books can only be added or removed one at a time, always from the top. Pine arrays can be used as a stack, in which case you will use only the push and pop functions to add and remove elements at the end of the array. So I'm not going to show a code example of this because it's quite simple to understand, I think. Push will add a value to the very end of an array, and pop will remove a value from the very end of an array. So using these two functions in conjunction, you can create a last in, first out stack with arrays if you need to. And there's a code example here if you want to check that out. There'll be a link below this video to this documentation. Then next up we have queues. So queues are the opposite. They are first in, first out constructions. They behave somewhat like cars arriving at a red light. New cars are queued at the end of the line, and the first car to leave will be the first one that arrived to the red light. To do this, we use the array.push function in conjunction with the array.shift function. So push adds a new value to the start of an array, and shift removes the very first value from an array. And then they have another code example here that you can, again, check out if you're interested in creating something like this. And again, if you guys are really interested in this stuff, let me know by emailing us or reach out in the Discord, and I'll take the time to record detailed lessons on these sorts of things. But for now, I don't think it's necessary as, to be honest, there hasn't been that much interest in arrays from other students so far. Now, as for calculations on arrays, we will cover this in the next lesson. There's an example I want to show you using some of these correlation functions. There's some cool calculations that are special purpose for arrays, and we'll cover some of these in the lessons to come. We covered concatenation or merging arrays. We didn't cover copying arrays, but it's quite simple. You can use the array.copy function. And so if you want to duplicate an array, you can create a new variable and assign it the array.copy function and then pass in the array that you want to copy all of the values into. So you could duplicate an array and then do what you need to that second copy of your original array. Then we have joining. This is an interesting one. This allows you to join or concatenate all of the elements in an array into a string and separate these elements with a specified separator. So you can see here that the example code here uses the array.join function. It passes in the array ID, so v1, v2, v3, v4, and then it passes in a separator, in this case a comma. So what this code would do is join all of the values in the specified array separated by the specified separator, and you can set the separator to anything you want as long as it's a string value. Now this is a pretty niche use case for arrays. I don't know when you would need to do this, but the option is there for those of you who do need this functionality. We covered sorting, we covered reversing, we did not cover slicing. Slicing an array using array.slice creates a shallow copy of a subset of the parent array. So for example, let's say you've got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in an array. You can use the array.slice function to cut out part of this array. So let's say you just want 2, 3, 4, the index of 2, 3, 4 out of your array. You can use the array.slice function to cut out a slice of the given array. So here use the array.slice function, pass in your array ID, pass in the beginning index and the ending index that you want to slice out of this array. And that will create a new array with only those values included in it. And then finally, we have searching arrays. So you can use the array.includes function, the array.indexOf function, and the array.lastIndexOf. So includes will return true if the given array contains the given value. So it's a Boolean function. IndexOf will return the array index of the given value. So if you had an array with 0, 1, 2, 3 in your array, and you used the array.indexOf, and you passed in this array and a value of 1, then this function would return 1, because 1 is in the index of 1 in our array. And then finally, we have last index of. So this does the same thing as index of, except that if you have multiple values of the same value in your array, so let's say we had an array of 0, 1, 2, 3, 2, and we used the array.lastIndexOf function, and we passed in the number 2, this function would return 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the index of 4, because that is the last index of the value 2 in our array. So again, if you want me to cover these rather niche subjects or features of arrays in their own lessons, let me know, and I'll do that when I find time. But for now, I think we can safely skip over most of these and move on to more practical use cases of arrays in the lessons to come. And then finally, we have error handling here. This can be useful, obviously, if you run into problems with your arrays. If you get any errors, you might want to check the documentation here for the corresponding error message to figure out what has gone wrong with your array. Anyway, that will do it for the introduction to arrays. Let's move on to some actual practical use cases.